Hey, Houndsman XP faithful, I want to talk to you a little bit on this podcast. I want to just start it out. I want to share a hunt with you I had last night. We'll just call it the homecoming hunt. I tried to get up to my ancestral birthplace, where the bones of my ancestors are buried, and take a hunt at least once a year. It's not that I have to travel that far to tree a raccoon, and just like everything else, a lot of times it's easier just to hunt close to my house here. I actually live about 2 hours from where I was raised now. But the reason it is so significant for me to go back there is because that's where I cut my teeth on hounds uh, with this lifestyle of being a houndsman. As I recently was at a Christmas gathering with my family, we broke out some old home movies, and one of those movies had some of my hounds in them from my early days. We're talking 13 years ago, or when I was 13 years old. So doing some math backwards, that makes it about 38 years ago. And some of those hounds had, in their 3-generation pedigree, one was an English hound. One was a hound that was a direct descendant and showed in his 3-generation pedigree Boyd's Little Joe, an iconic English hound. I had a female walker in that video that showed in the 3-generation pedigree very up close Hickory Nut Harry. And I wish I still had the paperwork on her. I'm thinking that she was a direct daughter of Hickory Nut Harry. One of the other hounds that I had, it wasn't in the video, but one of the hounds that I got to hunt was a hound named Rock Creek Charlie Pride. And I know for certain that Rock Creek Charlie Pride was a direct son to Hearn's Red Eagle Dick, owned by Gary Hearn. I'm dating myself, but I am also telling you, I'm telling you this story so that you understand how far back my roots go in this houndsman lifestyle and what motivates me to produce a podcast. So on this homecoming hunt last night, I'll just lay it out for you. I'll describe the area that we were hunting. There's a little place in Brown County, Indiana, called Stonehead. And it's a stop sign, really. But the reason it was called Stonehead is because for my entire life and for the last 50 years, there has simply been a head, a human head, that somebody carved out of a stone and set on a rock pillar in front of a house. And so it became known as Stonehead. Every local knows that intersection as Stonehead. And about 40 years ago, my family purchased some property just in the close proximity to Stonehead. And we spent every vacation, a lot of vacations, a lot of weekends in that valley there in Brown County. And even more significantly is my ancestors on my mother's side all come from Brown County, Indiana. And to give you some idea what Brown County is like, most people know it as Nashville, Indiana. People that are familiar with Nashville understand the traffic problems there in the fall. It's a hub for people that want to come to experience an outdoor lifestyle. The Hoosier National Forest begins there and runs south all the way down to the Ohio River, several miles encompassing several counties. Nashville itself is a destination place for many people. It's an artist colony with restaurants and shops and home of the Big Woods Brewing Company and distillery, Truth Distillery, and people flock to Nashville. Most people that are from Brown County dread September and October because State Road 46 runs in there from I-65, and there are several weekends where traffic is backed up from Nashville all the way to I-65, which is, I'm going to spitball it here and say 20 miles of people that simply want to get into Nashville and walk around and look in the window of shops. I don't get that, but that's what makes it special. Brown County is also the home of the Bill Monroe Bluegrass Festival. Bill Monroe, the iconic mandolin player, bluegrass legend, every year in Bean Blossom, Indiana, is the Bill Monroe Bluegrass Festival. And again, a destination place. For what it means to us as houndsmen, Brown County is a place that had a lot of beginnings for a lot of legendary hounds, or legendary hounds were influenced either by houndsmen that lived there or they came from there. And to give you an idea of what some of those are, you look at a dog that everybody in recent history should be pretty familiar with, especially in the competition coon hunting world, would be a dog like Hardwood Henry. Hardwood Henry came from the hills of Brown County. The Burgesses ended up buying him, and Jeff Rickliffs handled Henry and accomplished amazing things with the hound. But Hardwood Henry came from there. If you're a student of blue tick pedigrees and you study Rambo blood, then the lineage, Rambo 2 hunted in the hills of Brown County. He even spent a significant amount of time in Brown County. I know Bo Cephas has been there. A dog named Frosty Blue Bobo. Rob Wallen's Rocky Creek Jess. She's a world champion. Rob Wallen lived just north in Morgantown, and I've personally hunted with Rob in Brown County and with Jess in the hills of Brown County. I've never hunted with this dog, but I know that the area has this strong of an influence. Rory Cowles and Big River Jesse, another world champion coon hound, has hunted the southern parts of Brown County. And conversations that I've had with Rory at hunts and different things, I know that he's hunted that same area. So this is a hotbed. This is a for coonhound activity and people that are hunting these hounds. Some of what you're hunting is a lot of the legacy that has been built around this lifestyle and these hounds. Just a little place called Brown County, Indiana. So the reason I wanted to share this story with you and start this podcast out in this way is our hunt was significant in many ways. I got to share the woods with two people that had never been coon hunting last night. I got to hunt with my brother-in-law. But most importantly, I needed to get back to my roots and regroup this week. Brown County for me is a place with tall, straight timber. The hills are full of hardwoods, hickory, red oak, a lot of white oak, brown leaves. The things that come to my mind are the warmth of a wood stove in our family cabin, sitting in a deer stand, fishing in a lake, a small pond, catching bluegill the size of your hand. Sassafras tea, going down to the local store just down the road and having a hot lunch after hunting in the mornings. all the things that made my childhood, the beginning of my journey, it helped develop me and shape me for who I am. And it gave me a perspective of what is important and what is worth preserving, what is worth protecting. And in part has inspired me to make this podcast, to continue to promote this lifestyle that we have. This week we have seen freedom under all-out assault. And there is no more freedom to give up. I'm not going to try to make this a political podcast or try to be the authority on what's going on out there. I'm just a guy that is awake, and I observe, and I see what freedoms are trying to be taken away from us. Now, you may think it's a stretch to say freedoms are being taken away, and now we're going to try to tie this into hound hunting. Well, I think what we are going to see, and I believe this, we're seeing it right now, is they're going to move very rapidly to take freedom away from us. We're seeing it right now on social media platforms. Mention the T word on a social media platform and see if you don't get a warning. I put a post up on social media, and somebody commented on it with a repost, and then they immediately, a political repost that did not align with their fact checkers, and that person got a warning for simply a repost. We're seeing some of the largest accounts on social media be suspended by these tech companies. This is cancel culture. And they are going to continue to come after the freedoms that we have. That's why we can't give up an inch. We can't back down from what our freedoms are. The rights that we are guaranteed in the United States anyway are defined as inalienable rights, meaning they come from God. The reason our founders wrote the Constitution and defined our rights in that manner is so that they could not be taken away by men. Only God can take those away from us. So when we look at what is happening on the big stage, and we think about what freedoms are being given up, I don't believe that nations are going to rise and fall on my freedom specifically to be able to turn a hound loose. But it is a symptom of a bigger problem. It's about the freedom that we should be able to enjoy. And freedoms that are worth protecting and preserving and promoting. And being able to do that in a way where we're not censored, where we don't have to measure every word that we use, where we measure every word to make sure that we are safe. And that's what we are seeing right now unfolding before our eyes. We as a culture have bought into this society that is so heavily dependent upon tech. This podcast is produced on a technical network. your social media accounts. I don't know how many times a day you look at those, but I am embarrassed to admit how much time on a daily basis that I spend on social media. Now, some of that is for this podcast, but I waste hours a day looking through social media. Wasted. I bet if I boiled it down to actual valuable time spent, I could pretty much do everything I needed to do. And I'm talking about a few businesses that I own and operate. I could probably get that down to 30 minutes a day and then do something that is more significant. But I don't think it's a stretch to have a podcast where we talk about preserving our freedoms. And I'm very honored to have Alex Krstic is going to be joining us on this podcast. And Alex is from Australia. He's a repeat guest. And you're going to hear me edit in our conversation. And we're going to discuss freedom. And we're going to discuss freedom in the hound hunting community and what we can probably expect to be coming up against in the very near future. This thing is moving at warp speed, folks. It's been strategically put in place for years. Our dependency on tech and social media and all this stuff is coming home to roost right now, and we've all bought into it. And we need to have a plan. Nobody is talking about the plan. Because if you think that they're not coming after your freedom, then you are wrong. And this, we are going to talk about this in a way that we're going to break down tribalism. We are going to start building a united community. This isn't about the Houndsman XP brand. I honestly and sincerely tell you that if you never listen to another podcast after this because I make you mad or you think that I'm trying to speak from a political camp, then go find another podcast. And I would hate to see you go. I really would. But I will sacrifice everything within this brand. I will sacrifice everything within my other companies. I will sacrifice personally to ensure that we do not lose freedom. Without freedom, there is no brand. There is no life. There is nothing on the other side of that besides totalitarianism. Besides someone telling me how I have to live my life for no other reason than to fit some warped political agenda. And I am done with it. I'm over it. And the reason I'm using this podcast is because I can send you to other podcasts that can take you on much better journeys on introducing you to what the path forward is on a national scale, okay? But every one of those podcast creators, every one of those people that are having their social media platforms suspended or canceled and silenced right now are asking for help. And we're going to use this podcast to support that effort. And we are going to directly tie in how attacks on freedom at the bigger stage are going to come home and affect us in the things that we so dearly love that are a lot closer to home. I would dare say that if you're listening to this podcast, that your hounds are a huge part of you. They help define you as a person. that is worth preserving. You have raised your families around these hounds. You have made friendships around these hounds. You have built memories and life experiences around these hounds. They have helped shape you as a person. And I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that those freedoms are preserved. It would be much easier for us to be completely apolitical on this thing. Just not take the safe route. Let's talk about a hunt this week or like nothing's going on. Well, there's a lot going on, and we need to be awake for that. We need to see it for what it is and stand against it. We're going to build a community with Houndsman XP that breaks down tribalism. You need to be listening to other podcasts. I'm going to promote other podcasts. Every one of us does something different. Every hound hunting podcast does something a little bit different. And you need to be listening to everyone. This show is only an hour to an hour and a half a week. I can't dominate your time. This is a small market. But you need to be listening to other podcasts as well. Listen to the Nightlife Nation podcast. They do an excellent job. They've got excellent storytellers. Steve Fielder is an icon in this sport, this hound lifestyle that we all share. Brent Reeves does an outstanding job. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a great host. Nick Gilliland is genuinely a nice guy. I mean, he has dedicated his own resources to develop a YouTube channel from what I really believe is an effort to help other houndsmen with his Q&A sessions and different things like that. So listen to that. Don't be tribalistic. You need to listen to W's podcast. They're capturing some historical houndsmen. Brett Vaughn is capturing some awesome stuff for them. And you need to be listening to that. Clay Newcomb produces a great podcast. It's not solely or even focused on hound hunting, but Clay is a houndsman, and he does have episodes that talk about hound hunting. Search those out. Everybody has a different message, and they're all important to building a unified community. And when you build unity of like-minded people like we are, then we can stand. We can stand strong. We can be prepared for the future. Like I said, Alex Krstic is going to be joining us shortly on this podcast, and Alex is a repeat guest on the Houndsman XP Podcast. That episode is episode 76, Hounds Unlimited. Alex was a great guest. All the credit goes to Seth for snagging Alex and bringing him into the Houndsman XP podcast and capturing his story. But you're gonna really enjoy Alex. He is extremely articulate, and he has been very active in his work in Australia to preserve the freedoms to free cast hounds there. And I just couldn't think of a better guest that could give us some perspective of how important this freedom is, and what we do right here is going to affect freedom on the world stage. And Alex is going to bring a perspective that shows us what they've already been through, what they are battling in Australia, and it's going to hopefully open some eyes that we have got to start organizing and be prepared now. We have no idea what's coming. I don't have any idea. I don't have a crystal ball. But I'm not going to be fearful. And I'm not going to sit back and do nothing and hope that it goes away. I'm not going to bury my head in the sand. I'm going to be prepared. And I'm going to help us all be prepared with a solid message and create a community of houndsmen and hunters that can effectively preserve the freedoms that we enjoy. So you're going to hear this section of the podcast. We're going to have a little break here, and then you're going to get me editing in the recorded segment. So here we go. Well, Alex, I appreciate you coming on the podcast again and being from across the big pond there over in Australia. I was really impressed with your interview that you were with us on episode 76. But I'm just curious, are you guys paying attention, or are you guys paying, is it even worth paying attention to what's going on in the United States right now in the last week?
Well, look, Chris, we, or when I say we, I'm talking about houndsmen and men and women that hunt with dogs in Australia, are very much paying attention to what happens in the US, and that's pretty well by, using all the relevant social media platforms and listening to podcasts, and in particular podcasts like Houndsman XP, because we've identified, I suppose, some time ago that hunting with hounds, in particular in this country, which has been a tradition for well over 150 years, is under direct threat. And every so often, every 2 or 3 years, they'll have a crack at us.
Yeah.
And
it runs in cycles.
And yeah, exactly. And we'll do our usual thing. We'll use the old Australian "she'll be right, mate" attitude. And we'll say, geez, we got away with it that time. Let's just do what we do, and hopefully they won't have another crack at us. We've been apathy and, I suppose, complacency are the biggest enemies that we have for our way of life as far as hunting with hounds is concerned, because it's not a sport here. It is a way of life.
Right.
If you're a houndsman, it's 365 days a year, every year, where you've got a connection to your hounds. You're working with your hounds. You're feeding your hounds. You're vetting your hounds. You're exercising them. Even in the off seasons, which it is here at the moment. So, the threats that we're getting here, in many cases, mirror exactly what's going on in the US.
And that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. This past week in the United States, I'm just curious if the rest of the world is. I want to get the outside perspective of. Are you guys watching? Do you feel like that freedoms are being, taken away here in the United States, or how much time does Australia spend? How big of a news story is it in Australia of what's happening in the United States right now? That's where I want to start, I guess.
Well, what's happening in the US right now is front page news, and has been for a week at least. You would have to be living under a rock somewhere in the mountains not to have in some way been affected by what's going on with politics currently in the US, especially in light of the deaths that happened at your Congress, and the confrontation that's occurred there, the turmoil obviously that's occurring between the current president and people within his political party and elsewhere.
Right.
It is definitely a matter for concern. I think any thinking person would regard this as being something that's probably unprecedented in the history of both of our countries.
I agree, and you brought up a word there, and that's apathy. And the goal of this episode of the podcast is to show how the erosions of freedom, when you start taking freedoms away, how that is a trickle down. And like I said off air to you, nations aren't going to fall because we can't turn our dogs loose, but it's a symptom of a problem, and sooner or later the cancel culture is going to get to us. And have you seen that? Have you been
Well,
watching that on social media and stuff?
Yeah, look, it already has to some degree. I look back, I've been hunting with hounds and dogs pretty well for my entire adult life, and I've been around for a long time, so that's well in excess of 40 years.
Right.
And I can remember clearly the things that we used to be able to do.
Yeah,
back then.
I want to know what you were able to do and what you're not able to do now.
Exactly, and the over-regulation or the very onerous regulatory burden that's put on hunters these days, and it's not driven by good science. We're talking about stuff that's driven strictly and wholly and solely politically, and by animal welfare zealots, or animal. It's not so much animal welfare. Sorry, forgive me for saying that. It's animal rights zealots, people who are there to give animals the same rights as humans, be that right, be it wrong. I was brought up to believe that we as humans are here to look after the animals. We don't hold the same status as animals, and we as hunters are all animal lovers, in particular guys that use dogs and hounds to hunt with. And we're looking at legislation that's actually just come in, or it's about to be introduced into Parliament now, where they're recognising animal sentience as a major issue, and even to the stage where they're actually identifying fish as being sentient beings, and that they need to be treated in a certain way, and that the whole system, as far as what species we can hunt, what hunting techniques we can use, what breeds of hound we can use.
So you're talking about a study or a legislation about whether or not fish feel trauma.
This is a bill. This is a bill going before Parliament. This is a proposed piece of law that is going to identify, and they've made it crystal clear that they're looking at all animals as being sentient beings, including fish. Now, I'm tied up in the pest control industry, and a lot of the things that we've used over the years have been restricted significantly. Not just poisons and things, but also trapping systems, snaring systems, glue boards, all of that sort of stuff. These things, I need to have a parliamentary or a ministerial approval to use leg-hold traps. These are soft catch leg-hold traps to trap fox and wild feral dogs where I work. This is stuff at ministerial level, which would be similar to, say, somebody who's senior
level
in your state government.
Okay, yeah.
Giving me authority to be able to use a trap to trap a fox. This is unprecedented. In the past, they identified, this is, I suppose, the left side of politics, without putting too fine a point on it. 20 years ago, they decided, sorry about that, they decided that they would try to ban hunting with hounds. And there was a fair bit of pushback coming from us. And they said, okay, we won't ban hunting with hounds. We hunt sambar deer, which are large animals, right? They're about the size of an elk. We'll allow you to hunt with hounds, but we're going to remove the hounds that you normally hunt with, which are foxhound, walker type dogs. And you're only allowed to use beagles and bloodhounds. Now, how ridiculous is that? And we're talking about hunts that would be probably not dissimilar to your black bear hunts in the US, where you cover a lot of country in heavy bush, hard cover, to chase these animals. And imagine using beagles to do this thing, to swim across rivers and to go through snow to hunt these deer. Mm-hmm. And that was their attempt at managing hunters. And to this day, we fought fairly hard, and we got harriers back, which are a small type foxhound, as a bit of a I suppose a consolation prize. But the best hounds for the job aren't lawfully allowed to be used in this state, or in Victoria, to hunt sambar deer. And we're constantly battling away to try to get all of the good scent hounds, or the ones that are available internationally, to use for what we do. And, look, most of the dogs that I use are all sourced from the US. And, they're all real, I've got blue tick Kern hounds, I've got walkers, I've got a couple of nice black and tans.
Yeah.
But none of those dogs are legal to use on sambar deer. We can hunt other species with them, but not sambar deer. And this is something that's been taken away from us by powerful bureaucrats with political agendas, wholly and solely.
So did you
talk
get
about losing rights? These people are extremely powerful, and they know how to do business. And they're supported by the animal rights people who have got millions of dollars at their disposal, as opposed to small groups or small organisations that we have here in Victoria. Which I like you to scrape a few grand together, through raffles and through memberships. When you look, they're going up against PETA, they're going up against the RSPCA, they're going up against Animals Australia. These people are extremely well organised, extremely well funded, and they have got political connections. They know how to lobby, they know who to lobby to, and they know what our weaknesses are. They know that we're divided, and they know that we're apathetic. And it's really, you've got to be realistic. It's only a matter of time before they roll us.
That's
You still there?
I'm still with you. I'm just taking it all in. So tell me what you guys, when you hunted 40 years ago, what did your restrictions look like? I mean, what kind of regulations did you have? What were you allowed to do then that you're not allowed to do now?
Well, we were allowed to use scent hounds to hunt sambar deer, sambar, S-A-M-B-A-R, deer, in state forest throughout the state of Victoria using scent hounds. It didn't really matter what type of scent out it was, provided it was a scent trailing hound. You weren't allowed to use dogs that would run and catch the deer, like, any of the sight hound breeds. We were allowed to use semi-automatic centre-fire rifles, Remington Woods Masters and Browning BARs. They've been banned in recent, when I say recent times, to me it's recent. I think it was in 1996, the government banned semi-autos as a result of one lunatic, shooting people in a place down in Tasmania, and they changed the law there. They had a big gun buyback. All the semi-automatics pretty well were forfeited. So now we're left with using bolt action rifles, pump action rifles. They're no less deadly than a semi-auto. It's just that they're a little bit more agricultural, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what were they? What was Australia trying to accomplish? What was some of the conversation that transpired around that?
It was an absolute whitewash. You talk about taking people's rights away. They made an arbitrary decision to buy back every single semi-automatic rifle. This is everything from a 22 right through to a 300 Win Mag, semi-auto, shotgun, anything that's semi-automatic was banned. And then they made a few exceptions to a few rules. Like the military could have them, obviously, the police. Certain landholders were allowed to go back to using semi-automatic shotguns. But to possess a semi-automatic centre-fire rifle, something like an AR-15 or a AK-47 or a Valmet Hunter or HK-770, any of those type of weapons, you need to have a special licence. I'm fortunate enough to have those, but I can only use those weapons in connection with my work as a professional hunter. If I need to go to hunt deer recreationally with my hounds, I can only use a pump action rifle because that's what the rules are. These are the onerous legislations that these people bring through. And I sometimes scratch my head thinking, how much more dangerous is a guy with a bolt action rifle than a guy with a semi-automatic rifle? It's very much a subjective test that you need to apply.
So did your government try to pass that through on what we're seeing? What we're seeing here is basically fear tactics, and just like the breach on the U.S. Capitol, now they're trying to censor social media platforms, saying that they didn't take a hard enough stand on against violence, and so they're trying to use scare tactics and get buy-in from their supporters on a fabricated narrative.
Exactly the same happens here. Usually in situations like this, in particular here in Australia, the truth is usually the first victim, and you get some skewed excuse. We recently had, obviously, as everybody else has, problems with COVID, and one of our senior bureaucrats here stuffed things up in a fairly major way where, because of their ineptitude, COVID had got out of a particular quarantine area and went on to kill about 800 people. When they quizzed the government officials, for want of a better term, and others as to whose fault it was, they did the old "who, me?" No, it wasn't me. I can't remember any of that.
Right.
So nobody put their hand up to accept responsibility. They ran an investigation, a sham investigation run by a retired judge, that came up with a zero response. They couldn't tell us who was the person responsible for killing 800 Victorians because of their ineptitude. Now, that's a classic situation of the system destroying itself, just through using spin doctors and spin and banning, I suppose, restricting the terms of reference for investigations and stuff like that. We're no different to you in the US. We suffer the same political hand is quicker than the eye stuff that you guys do. Don't worry.
That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you about it, Alex, is because I think there is something for us to learn from people who have already fought. You guys have already got the experience, so and you've already fought some of the battles that I think are coming down the pipe, and I think it's going to be rapid. I think it's going to be a lot more rapid than what people think. We're seeing things moving at warp speed over here. Some of the I just can't even believe it when I open up headlines and look at news articles. Some of the things that our government is targeting right now, I would have never dreamed that, and I think it's going to move rapidly through our culture to it's going to hit close to home a lot quicker than what any of us realize. And I don't want anybody to be scared. I don't want anybody to be fearful. I don't think that's the time for it. But I think if we don't prepare ourselves, then we are going to be overwhelmed very quickly.
Well, Chris, it's already happening. It's already happening here in Australia, and I'd venture to say that it's probably already happened. It's already happened in the US. I'm aware of a number of states in the US where hound hunting was banned, or hunting certain game species with hounds was banned, not all that long ago. And the same thing happened here. So it's pretty well tit for tat. It happens at both ends, on both shores of the Atlantic. As I said earlier, the people that are seeking to influence what we're doing are much better organised than we are, and we as hunters and as houndsmen haven't really learnt much from history. We tend to forget things that have hurt us in the past, and we tend to be, as I keep bringing up this word, we tend to be apathetic and thinking, oh no, look, this won't happen, not in our lifetime. I'll still do whatever it is that I want to do. It doesn't work that way. We're losing little liberties every single time a new law is passed, every time a regulation is passed, every time a gate to a public access hunting area is locked for whatever reason. That's another technique they use here. They say, "Oh no, we're going to close this piece of country off because of concerns we have with erosion, or the track's not in good condition, all that sort of stuff." Or we're going to run a poisoning program. We're going to be poisoning foxes that are killing long-footed potoroos in this area. And they say, you guys are welcome to go hunting, but just be aware that there is hundreds and hundreds of 1080 baits being laid in the area, and they may affect your hounds.
Yeah,
they know full well. Yeah. They know full well that we won't hunt an area where there's 1080 baits, you know. But still, the bureaucrats, the government, and they're all singing from the same hymn book, are the ones that are manipulating what we do.
I've got a couple questions. I want to circle back around to something you said. A lot of times you will see the reaction, and this is just bravado, and I'm sure some people mean it, but based on what you have seen in Australia, for the guy that sits back and says, if they outlaw it, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'll pay the consequences. What kind of impact has that had in Australia, and have there been people that tried it, and what's your experience with that?
Well, that's the attitude. You hear all these hairy-chested redneck boys saying, yeah, we'll just do it and we'll hope for the best. Well, I can guarantee you there's very, very few of them that back up what they're going to say. And if they go and do it anyway, they become a targeted, or the target of police operations, of game management authority operations, and they find themselves in court, you know, losing vehicles, being fined tens of thousands of dollars, losing their rights to possess firearms because of that hairy-chested attitude. It just doesn't work.
Right.
You know, you're kidding yourself.
It sounds romantic.
You think you're going to get away with it? You're kidding yourself.
Yeah, it sounds romantic, and you want to be that, you know, that William Wallace that stands out there and cries for freedom, but when it comes time to paying the piper, then that can be a whole different game. You know, I mean, in our case, you can spend time in a federal penitentiary, you know, and spend a lot of time there for violating things on the Endangered Species Act, and I don't put it past the animal rights people to try to get federal charges on violation of some of this stuff. So, yeah, I wanted to get your take on that. The other question I had was, if you could roll back time, if you could go back 40 years ago and change the way your hound hunting community in Australia did things, are there things there that you feel like you could have done to preserve your lifestyle as a houndsman?
Look, the good thing about hindsight, it's always 20/20. You know, it's always crystal clear. And if you had an opportunity to go back and fix a few things that have been negative, I'm sure that we'd be in a better position than we are now. But I would look. There's a lot of things that we could do, or we could have done. One of the biggest issues that we've had is petty jealousies between houndsmen and hunting groups, and demarcation issues about areas they hunt and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure you get the same in the US.
Now, are you talking about like between houndsmen and say spot and stalk or still hunters, or are you talking
both?
Okay,
the whole lot. Hound hunting is looked at by some as being an unfair advantage or taking an unfair advantage when hunting. It's looked at by others as being just something that's practiced by those with red necks and hotted up V8 trucks, and
right.
people that are out there to cause problems and upset the other bush users. In many cases, we've been our own worst enemies. There's been competition between the various types of hunting. There's been competition between the various hound teams, or groups of hound hunters, and it's all been based on bullshit. There's, if they actually sat down and nutted out what was actually going on and tried to get to the truth, you would find that they would have a hell of a lot more common ground than they think, and that once they actually understood what was going on in everybody's camp, you'd find that we'd get on a hell of a lot better, and we'd be a hell of a lot more organised as hunters and as houndsmen to counter some of this stuff that's going on politically that's threatening us. Look, even the hunting organisations, there's sort of competition between some, and there's some get on with each other, others don't. There's character clashes, there's personality clashes.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of things that go on that all serve to destabilise us. The authorities, like the bureaucrats and the politicians, know that we're not united and we haven't got our act together. So we're, as I said earlier, we're an easy target. And if there's something I could change in the past, I suppose the main thing would be is to set up an effective communication system between all hunters, where all the inaccuracies, the untruths were addressed, and that everybody knew exactly what everybody else was doing with regards to the techniques and the tactics that they adopted, and that there was some good understanding based on the truth, based on truthful communication. That would go a long way towards helping us. The duck hunters, the quail hunters. Most houndsmen are also duck shooters, and they hunt quail. They go fishing,
right?
And they're still at odds with each other. A lot of these organisations are still at odds with each other. Instead of pulling in the same direction, they pay a lot of lip service to working together. But when push comes to shove, sometimes they're not probably as they're not as keen to actually pull in the same direction. Hidden agendas or personal agendas are the biggest problems that we have, I think.
Yeah, everybody's always too quick to sacrifice what somebody else has.
Exactly.
I'll let them have this, and then maybe I will be protected, without the understanding that if we don't stand it, it's all going to go. It's all on the table. It's all on the chopping block. So we've talked about it. These anti-hunting organizations are very well organized, and they know that. So they're more than happy to be very systematic in what they eliminate. And so if this is the weak link, we'll take this. But to think that I'm safe if I give them this is just an asinine point of view. I mean, it doesn't work like that. And
it doesn't.
And I was fortunate recently. This is kind of a neat thing. I took a dad and his son who are big deer hunters, and I hunt on their property. And they said, "Hey, we'd like to go with you." And so I took advantage of that. They had no understanding of anything to do with hound hunting. They'd never had any exposure to it. Maybe they'd had some, he'd had some beagles in the past, but he didn't understand, night hunting with hounds and things like that. And by the time that was over, it was a good experience. And I felt normally the guy this is a serious deer hunter. I mean, manages his property, runs cameras. This guy lives, eats, and dies by deer hunting, and normally those guys aren't the most cordial about hound hunting. But he invited me to come to his property and hunt. We had a great time, and I had as much takeaway from that and understanding that, man, there is a way to bridge the gap here. So
of course there is.
So I look at what you guys have done in Australia as an opportunity for us to learn and prepare. And we've already had many losses. Our friends in California would say, yeah, now the rest of the country is going to see what we've already been through. And I don't think they're satisfied, and I don't think they're saying that from a vindictive standpoint. But Australia has already fought a lot of these battles, and I think you've got some valuable information for us of how we can be on point for some of it.
Look, we've got a lot to learn. We've got a lot to learn still. Don't worry. We've been through the mill, but there's a lot of things that we haven't learned our lessons well, and I'm talking as a group. There's a lot of things that we can do a hell of a lot better, and through people like yourself and others that are keen houndsmen and regarded very much as a way of life. Things that you guys are actually doing. Like, are you familiar with the Virginia Hunting Dog Alliance and all those people?
Am I familiar with it?
Yeah.
Yes.
We look at a lot of the stuff that those people are doing, and they seem to be doing a lot of good work in spreading the word as far as hound hunting is concerned, and also doing a lot of lobbying type of work. I'm not au fait fully with everything that they do, but from what I've seen, it seems to be they're definitely on the right track, and that we can learn a lot from them. With the codes of practice, the codes of conduct, the way in which they address upcoming legislation, people keeping an eye on laws that are being changed or bills that are put up to become law. These are the sort of things that we need to do. We need to have lobbyists. We need to have. There's a lot of clever people in the hunting fraternity. We need to try to bring them to the fore, and we need to try to get them to assist, to use their skills. Sadly, here, I don't know if the US is the same. Most of the organisations are run by people who turn up to meetings, and sometimes they're not the best people to run organisations. And you've got to be truthful about that.
Right.
You need to recruit smart, agile, polished people that are in touch with how to get things done and how to do things right. If we don't do that, we're at a distinct disadvantage.
Well, you certainly can't turn away those people that are willing to show up at the meetings and
No, not at all. Not at all. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. We should embrace those people and encourage them to come to the meetings. But we need to also identify skill sets that are required in order to give us the best opportunity to keep what we've got and to try to scrape back a bit of ground. Those people, we need to identify them, we need to find them, and we need to, we need to pay for it. But we do need to have at least some sort of professional representation in order to defend what we're on about. Amateurs are fine to have in clubs, and they can support clubs and do fantastic things with the clubs, but you also need to have some hard-bitten professionals that can get stuff done in order to maintain what we've got.
Yeah. And it seems like those people that you talk about, and we'll just talk about the professionals within the hound hunting community, they've got the least amount of time. There's a reason why they're successful. There's a reason why they're successful in business. There's a reason why they're successful with their hounds. They're disciplined people. And at some point, we've got to recruit them and make them aware of the fact that they have got something valuable to offer, and convince them to help dedicate their time. You take like Wisconsin Bear Hunters Association, for instance. We just had a podcast with Carl Chattel. Carl's a professional man. He understands business. He understands. He's not your typical houndsman, and we need to search those people out within our respective areas and convince them, and if we've got to beg them to get involved, so that we can have that sort of insight into how to get things done.
Even if it's just for a mentoring role, we you know, the people that are successful are people that are disciplined and that have learned from experience, that make it their business to learn stuff and develop a skill set. Even if people like that could offer some sort of mentoring role and offer advice to the people that are actually doing the work, in order to, you know, to facilitate
Sure.
a way forward. You know, they don't have to do everything for everyone, but you know, the people that can chip in bits and pieces here and there that that can assist us in the long run.
Agreed. So what do you see the future of hound hunting? What's, from the outside looking in and knowing what's happening in the United States right now, if you had a crystal ball and you could look into it and you could say, this is what I think is going to happen to the hunting community in the United States if they continue down this path, what do you see happening there, Alex?
Well, my heart tells me that hound hunting will be around for a long, long time, but my head tells me that it is under a significant threat, and that we are living on borrowed time. It is only a matter of time before we as hound hunters get overwhelmed by the people that are seeking to sink us. I'm speaking here in Australia. Mm-hmm. I can't see it being much different in the US. Look at the UK, you know, and look what they've done with what's happened with hound hunting over there, you know.
Right.
Things have changed significantly in the last, 10 years there, where it's unlawful to pursue animals with hounds.
Right.
To think that we here in Australia, or you guys over in the US, are immune from this growing anti-hunting sentiment, you've got to be kidding yourself. And the first ones that are going to go under the bus are the hound hunters. I can guarantee you that.
Right.
Because we're the easiest ones to identify.
And then identify, or why do you think houndsmen are such low-hanging fruit?
Well, look, the thing is, for instance, if you drive down a highway here on a Friday night during the winter, and you'll see a heap of, we call them utes, but they're a pickup truck with a big old dog box on the back of them. Mm-hmm. The ones that get intercepted by the police at roadblocks are usually those, because they're easy to see, they're easy to identify, and the cops will pull them up and quiz them and see if they've got the right permits and the right licences, whether they've been drinking, whether they've been on drugs. And it happens with regular monotony. And when you're in the bush hunting with your hounds, by virtue of the fact that you're actually in there, that the hounds are in there and they're being free cast, and they're bawling after a deer, chasing it through the bush, it's fairly hard to hide. It's pretty obvious.
All right.
And you're easy to see. You know, everybody, well, a lot of people in Australia these days have ATVs or four-wheel drive vehicles, or whatever you guys call them over there. And there's more and more people in the forests and in the bushes every year.
Yes, it's happening here too.
That are not hunters, and they interact with hound hunters regularly. Thankfully, on most occasions, those interactions are positive. but on some occasion they're not. And these are the sort of things that, you can do 1,000 good things, but one bad thing pretty well cancels it all out,
Right. It's always amplified.
Of course it is. And the media aren't our friends. The media generally tend to be fairly negative when it comes to hunting animals, using the, Elmer Fudd type arrangement. There's a guy running around with a gun,
right,
blasting Bambi or shooting Daffy Duck out of the sky.
We've given you all kinds of metaphors from the United States, haven't we?
Well, look, if I tell you what, I blame Walt Disney for getting that mouse to talk. As soon as he got him talking, what do they call it? Anthropomorphization.
Right.
People humanising animals.
Yes.
That certainly hasn't helped us. But getting back to the serious part of things is hound hunters, by virtue of how they do things, by virtue of the fact that they're proud and they're loud, and that the movement and colour and noise that's involved with hound hunters attracts a lot of attention to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be aware of that, and we need to be acutely aware of it. And social media is not our friend either. Some of these people that put up footage of things that they ought not show on social media, like video footage and various photographs of things that they shouldn't put up, doesn't help the cause much, And
well, how do we hiding is never been effective. You talk about living on borrowed time. So how do we continue to put forth a positive message and preserve our lifestyle? How would you suggest that happen?
I think leadership, and I use the term leadership in a way where there are lots of formal and informal leaders in the hound community, and you as an ex-law enforcement officer know that it's a hell of a lot easier to get things done by getting people to voluntarily comply with things than having to enforce your way into catching bad guys doing the wrong thing.
Right.
So good leadership by everybody that does go hound hunting, people that run their hound crews, manage the crew properly and make sure that everybody's towing the line and doing the right thing. The young guys that are out there learning the game, they need to identify what's right and what's wrong, and they need to comply with the rules. Everybody has a role to play, and if we can demonstrate that we're being proactive, if we can demonstrate that we're doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, for the sake of preserving and protecting what we have, we'll go a long way towards maintaining what we have. But it requires people to show initiative, to show leadership, to say, bad behaviour it's not helping any of us.
Right.
And it's the quickest way to get us thrown out the back door than anything else. It's hunter behaviour. It's people making complaints about guys that are doing the wrong thing. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that the majority of hound hunters do. The majority of hound hunters do the right thing. It's just a small number of people that seem to be consistently causing issues that are hurting us.
One of the things that
get them into the fray would be right.
Yeah, one of the things that has always perplexed me in my business, you look at other sporting groups as a whole. I was in fish and wildlife enforcement, so I've been on the side that was deemed the enemy or whatever, characterized as the bad guy to hunters. Rightfully or wrongfully so, but at any rate, my observations in my career were, say you have a river and you've got guys that are duck hunting on the river, and you've got one group of guys, there's 6 groups out there, and there's one group of guys that is breaking all the rules. You know, they are baiting ducks or sky blasting, they're shooting over their limit, they're stuffing ducks in the mud, doing whatever and those other groups will police their own ranks. They will absolutely call those people out and say, you don't represent me. Deer hunters, elk hunters, bighorn sheep hunters, all these other groups will sit there and say, I am not going to let you misrepresent what my lifestyle is all about. And I think that as houndsmen, from what I'm hearing you say, the first order of business is for us to get our own house in order.
Exactly. And that's what when I made reference to leadership, it is, you know, people that are in, you don't have to be in a formal position of leadership, but if you can apply suitable, judiciously measured out peer group pressure to people who aren't doing the right thing, sometimes it's the best way to get things sorted out, you know. And I think that unless we do that, we're in for it. We can't, burying your head in the sand and playing secret squirrels never worked. It's never worked in the past, and it's not likely to work in the future.
Right.
We need to be proactive, and we need to be proud about what we do, and we need to be positive about what we do, and we need to spread the word. You know, if we don't spread the word and we try to keep it all underground, we're not doing ourselves any favours. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. I look at it as stewardship. You know, I have been afforded the opportunity to the freedom to do the things that I want to do, and so I need to be able to take care of that. And I owe it to myself. I owe it to my fellow houndsmen. And we need to get an understanding that this is a gift, and it's something that can't be taken lightly, and we need to do everything in our power to protect it. And deer hunters are a good example, an easy, understandable example for people in the United States to understand. But if a deer hunter goes out and shoots a deer at night under a light and then takes his picture with it on Facebook and tries to pass it off as a legal kill, and come to find out that he broke the law, they will publicly shame that guy to the point that he won't have a career. I mean, there's perfect examples of outdoor TV hosts and stuff that had outdoor hunting shows that were caught up in some of that, and their career was over.
And so it should be.
Yeah, I'm just walking through some things here, and like you said, most houndsmen I know, this is not a rampant deal, but we've got to break the culture that if we don't want to see that, we can't let the bad actors define who we are. I guess that's the best way I can put it. We can't let the bad actors define who we are.
Look, exactly. And look, none of us are without sin, you know. We've, you know, as young guys, you know, sometimes, you know, you bend a rule here and there, you know, and we don't want to be wandering around telling everybody how holier than thou we are.
No.
But at the same time, you look back and you look at the mistakes that you've made in the past as a young guy, and you say, well, I've learned from that. That didn't work very well. I'm not going to do it, you know. and make a conscious decision to be ethical and do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, without belting people over the head with it. It's just, you know, a lot of things are solved around a hound hunter's fire on a Friday night. You know, typically we'll go out of a Friday night or a Friday, go to our spot where we meet. There'll be a fire and there'll be, you know, a few guys hanging around. We'll tie the hounds out on their long chain, and then the conversations start. That's probably the best place for the information and the I suppose, the doctrines to flow around those fires, because that's where it all happens, around the fires.
Yep, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
If the leaders of these crews can continue, can do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, it'll certainly help. But we've got a long way to go here. But we've still got a lot of things to learn.
Yeah, we're trying to just define, not necessarily, not only what's legal, but what's also morally right to be doing, and a lot of times that can only come from mentorship and positive influence over the inexperienced houndsman or the new houndsman, where we mentor those people in what a good job looks like and how we can effectively do that. And I think that's key to securing our future as houndsmen and as a hound hunting community. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit here, Alex. I'm kind of curious what your take is on what you're seeing on social media with cancel culture and stuff like that.
Well, there's very little positive stuff as far as hound hunters are concerned on social media from anybody other than hound hunters. We're not. Everybody's saying men with guns are obviously bad people,
right?
And that's the sort of culture that's being developed in this country, and I think probably to some degree in your country.
Yes.
Hunters are looked at as being bad guys. But if you go to New Zealand, for instance, classic example, it's nothing to drive through the main road in Auckland. They've got a great big river that runs pretty well through the centre of it. And during the duck season, it's nothing to see guys getting changed into their cams on the side of the road, pulling their shotgun out and blasting away at ducks, and everybody gives them a little wave, and they're hunters. Their culture towards hunting is so much different to ours, and the Kiwis, they're fantastic at promoting positive culture in hunting and fishing, and because it forms, I suppose, a large part of their economy and through tourism, etc. But they're taking advantage of it. They've got no native game species in New Zealand. All game species in New Zealand, apart from birds, are introduced. So their hunting culture is fantastic, and the government and a lot of the bureaucracies are taking advantage of it and promoting it. Where here in Australia, and in particular in Victoria, the hunting culture is not being promoted by many of the bureaucracies. The Game Management Authority here in Victoria, they'll tell people everything they need to know about hunting and what their responsibilities are and what all the rules are, but they don't actively promote hunting at all, full stop. And that's why this social media stuff, where the negativity towards hunters is sort of being, I don't know if it's not always obvious. It's sometimes very subtle. But if you look at say the RSPCA stance on that sort of thing, and Animals Australia and World Wildlife Fund and those other organisations, as far as hunting is concerned, they're extremely negative. Even though hunting, in many cases, is one of the best ways to manage endangered species and overabundant wildlife, they tend to ignore that and leave it to into the mess in which it's become, and especially in this country with wild horses in certain areas. It was actively encouraged for people to hunt these overabundant animals that were causing problems. Now they don't do it because they're copping too much flack from the so-called from the so-called public opinion, public opinion.
Yeah, there's a cultural influence there that doesn't allow them to do that.
Of course, and you've got a scenario. They keep hearkening back to this, where they say, community expectations. They keep making reference to community expectations. I'm just wondering which community they're referring to and what the expectations are.
Right.
They never go into any specifics.
Well, you brought up New Zealand and you talked about a positive influence and a positive outlook, positive image for hunters. All of those things are driven by what's culturally acceptable. And your policymakers are bureaucrats. So how do you think New Zealand is accomplishing that? Obviously, they must have a pretty good ground game going on there to keep the bureaucrats on their side.
Look, I think their Department of Conservation, they call it DOC, they're very hands-on as far as management of introduced species is concerned. And they've got a significant issue with introduced species. So one of their best management tools, or one of the most effective management tools, is to encourage people to hunt these introduced species in order to mitigate the damage that these animals are causing. Mm-hmm. And I think as part of that, they've got to be able to demonstrate that hunting is legal and it's legitimate and it's an effective and humane way of dealing with overabundant animals. And hunting, recreational hunting as a management tool across the board, and here I am telling you obviously would know better than I do, is a good way of managing native species. You right. Hunt white-tailed deer over there, which I suppose is probably your most
number one hunted species in the United States now is a white-tailed deer.
It's your premier game animal. So here in Australia, we've got overabundant eastern grey kangaroos. Contrary to popular belief, we have more kangaroos here than we possibly need, and there's a number of reasons for that disproportionately large number of kangaroos. Most of those reasons are to do with land management practices and things like that. But we can't lawfully hunt those kangaroos unless we get a special permit to hunt them. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be good if we could have the same system that we have that you guys have in the US, to actually have an open season with controls, of course,
sure,
to hunt eastern grey kangaroos here.
So when you talk about a special permit, is that like you have to make an application and then pay significant amount of money to be able to hunt something that is common sense would tell you should be a regulated hunting season? What does that special permit look like?
What it is, kangaroos are hunted. They hold a number of different statuses. Kangaroos are hunted by professional hunters under permit for the pet food industry and for human consumption, right? They are not hunted by recreational hunters for the same reasons, because it's unlawful. The only way you can hunt kangaroos in the state of Victoria is either to do it be a professional and to do it under their permit system, mm-hmm. or if you're recreational, you need to know a landholder who will get a permit to destroy a said number of kangaroos and include you on that permit as a hunter to fill out the number of kangaroos on that permit. There's no season on kangaroos, or other overabundant wildlife, and that reflects very badly on the way in which this is all managed, because the problems that we have with kangaroos are very similar to the problems you have with overabundant whitetail. Mm-hmm. We have lots of collisions on roads. We have animal welfare issues with animals starving during droughts. Coming into build-up areas, confrontation issues, all of the usual things that happen with overabundant wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just thought I was just curious about that part, and maybe give us a look into the future, something that's so obvious. I mean, it seems to me from hearing you talk that it doesn't take a lot of science to understand that we need to get rid of some kangaroos. And so I wanted to use
all
that.
your rock and roll stars, all your American rock and roll stars and actors start having central chest pain. They get on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook telling everybody how horrible these Australians are and killing Skippy the kangaroo, you know.
Oh man.
This is
right.
You know, the truth, as I said earlier, is the first victim with any of this sort of stuff. It's all pumped up emotive claptrap that gets in the way of the truth here.
Right. Well, let's try to put. It sounds like we've been kind of doom and gloom on a lot of this, and I don't think we need to be. I'm
a very positive person, believe it or not.
I try to be too. I'm trying to build this community and give some people some hope. I think give some people some takeaways so that we don't have to walk away from this and let the recent incidents on the national stage, international stage, we can't let that divert us from our work here. You know, I went a week and I wasn't even going to, this past week's been horrible for me. I've been watching it and I wasn't even going to produce a podcast this week based on that. But I kind of thought, you know, we need to start now. We at least need to be aware of what's going on. And I wanted to talk to you in Australia, because from listening to you in the past and following, you guys have already experienced a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of good takeaways there, and that's why I wanted to have you on, Alex. I really appreciate what you're doing over there at with Houndsman United, your social media platforms and different stuff like that. You got a lot of insight for us, so I really appreciate it. And the takeaways. What would you say if you were in the United States and you saw what was coming, or you felt like you knew what was coming? What are 3 things you could tell houndsmen that they need to start doing right now?
Well, before I give you those 3 things, I'll say that, you know, as much doom and gloom as I suppose we've espoused over the last short period of time, things are still pretty good over here. We've got fantastic long hunting seasons. We spend 7 months a year hunting with our hounds in the mountains, free casting our hounds in the mountains on public land in Australia.
That's great.
As hunters do all over the place, and we have an absolute ball. It's a classic manifestation of freedom at its finest, and we'd really like to keep it. But so far so good. We're enjoying ourselves and having a good time, but we need to do a little bit in order to ensure that we're going to have a future. And I'm sure that you guys in the US that are hunting your coons and your bobcats and your bears and your mountain lions,
all the good stuff.
You can free cast your hounds and hunt them, which I think is fantastic. And we wait with bated breath for every episode of Houndsman XP and all of the other podcasts. And I've been lucky enough to hunt with hounds in various places in the US, and it's still good times. You know, it's really good stuff, and hopefully it'll continue. But in order to make it continue, you need to join a hunting organisation. Thing 1, join a hunting organisation, become active, and do whatever it is that you can do. You know, if you can donate money, if you can put in a bit of time, even turning burgers at the local cook-ups, do anything in order to become positively involved in your hunting organisation, and encourage other hunters to join the hunting organisations as well, because that's the beginning of at least being able to demonstrate to those that are against us that we're becoming organised and we're starting to get our act together.
Yes.
Secondly, I think a lot of the hunting organisations probably need to put their differences aside and start to pull together, pull in the same direction. You guys have got some extremely powerful hunting organisations over there, you know, from the NRA down, that that have got a hell of a lot of pull. They're not always singing off the same hymn book. It would be good if they could start identifying opportunities to find where they have common ground and to make use of that to ensure a future. And I suppose thing 3 is to be positive, or try to get people to lobby for hunting as being a legitimate, legal, healthy pastime and a healthy way of life. Mm-hmm. We seem to be always coming up against brick walls on that, where somehow the fishermen always seem to get the accolades. Oh yeah, go fishing, it's really good. But if you're a hunter, you're a bad guy. Right. That culture needs to change, and we need to demonstrate that us hunters, we can be, doctors or lawyers or concreters or builders or dentists or mechanics. We come from all different ways, all different walks of life, and that we're normal human beings. We need to humanise ourselves, and we need to show people that we're positive and decent family people, the same as everybody else is. And I think that's probably the best way to promote hunting. And with the hounds, people need to see our hounds, and people need to come up and pat a hound and see that it's not a savage, bloodthirsty psychopath that wants to kill everything. They need to find out that hounds are just good old dogs that happen to be good at certain things, but for most of the time they're just a dog that hangs around the backyard or in a pen or in a house as a pet.
Yep.
We need to be able to demonstrate that to those that are prepared to listen. And having said that, I know I'm probably babbling on here a bit, but
not a bit.
We're never going to get the antis on side. No matter, as long as our bums point to the ground, we won't get the antis on side. But we have got the vast majority of people who are sitting on the fence. They're the people that we want to get, getting in our camp and backing us up. And they're the people that we need to get over the line. The antis will never come on, but these others, and they're the ones that count, are the ones that we need to try to influence.
Yes, positively influence those people. They are the key to the future of hunting. We just don't need to alienate them. We need to be inclusive.
Exactly.
We need to.
Where you get an opportunity to do the right thing and help somebody out and to positively promote hound hunting or hunting in general, take it and do it. Do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah, when the COVID thing kicked off, we started talking about, the recent increase in people who were looking for ways to get back to outdoor hunting, and we've talked about it on the podcast a lot about the increases in hunting license sales, fishing license sales, and just there was an upsurge in that effort, and we've got a golden opportunity right now. We've got people that are looking for ways to be more involved in our hunting communities, and we should embrace them, and if nothing else, just show them the right way to do it so that they're not shooting holes in this boat for us down the road. And
that's one of the big problems we have, people shooting holes in the boat, and unfortunately we're running out of fingers to
yeah, that's right. Well, Alex, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate your time. I know you came in from fishing today. Did you catch any fish?
Sadly, no. The temperature here today is 37 degrees Celsius, which makes it brings you close to the 100-degree Fahrenheit mark, and we had a pretty stiff northerly blowing. Well, that's my excuse anyway. We didn't do any good on the fish.
Yeah.
We'll go back another day.
Right. Alex, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you guys are doing over there in Australia. I really do. It's intriguing, and I think you've got a lot of good insight for us. So,
well, you guys keep up the good work with that podcast. we look forward to Mondays here when the podcast comes out, so make sure you keep it rolling.
We will. We're going to be delayed one day this week, so this will be a Tuesday release.
Excellent. I'll look forward to listening to it.
All right. Well, Alex, until I talk to you again, you follow your hounds and I'll follow mine. Normally, that's the final word on this podcast. You follow your hounds, I'll follow mine. But in this case, I feel like we need to wrap this up and put some exclamation points on this. One thing you can do right now, today, is contact your representatives and senators and tell them that you will not stand for censorship. You will not stand for cancel culture and totalitarianism. I implore you to do that today. Take an active stance on this. And I'm telling you that what we're seeing on the big scale is only going to embolden the people that want to take away our freedom. PETA and the animal rights crowd are licking their chops right now. If we can take the very fabric and the foundations of our freedom away, things like freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, our freedom of religion, the list goes on of things that are under attack right now. If they can take those away so easily, our freedoms and our rights on the home front will be more threatened. It will trickle down to anything that they want. This is a power grab, and you can take a stand today by contacting your senators and your representatives in Washington, and you can find their contacts simply on the Senator and House of Representatives website. Don't delay. Our freedom depends on it.